We've been doing a series called Decade by Decade, which I've gleaned from a book written by a mentor of mine named Bob Beal. He wrote this book called Decade by Decade, and this book was born out of over 5,000 one-on-one executive mentoring sessions. And he found patterns in people's lives for each decade. And so I've used this as a template and added scripture, my own observations, and my own thoughts. Because of our church partners' generosity, everyone present today, you can take one of these books as our compliments, our free compliments. They're in the vestibule on the way out. Everyone, I'd love for you to get this, and if you don't have one already, and read first the chapter on your decade and start there and go from there. I'm going to kind of share some things today about children under 10, teens, and people in their 20s. And when I've been doing this, here's what I've been asking you to do. When I talk about your decade, I want you to listen up. When I talk about someone else's decade or a decade that you're not in, I'm going to ask you to listen in. Bob gives us some S words for each decade. Children under 10, the key word is security. Teens, the key word for that decade is self. In our 20s, the key word is survival. And this one hit me the hardest of all of the words. In our 30s, I see some 20s-somethings shaking their heads, survival. I'm going to help you today. You're welcome. It's going to be awesome. 30s is success. 40s is struggle, and then hopefully you get to significance. In your 50s, you're finding your stride. In your 60s, the key word is strategic. In your 70s, people in their 70s are thinking about succession. Who's going to do what I do next? In your 80s, the key word is slippery. And in your 90s, the key word is sleep. It's interesting because I was talking with, actually, Bob called me. I've been sending him the messages and the notes, and Bob called me this week, and Bob is recovering from a health setback, and he's in his 80s, and I happened to think about this. I said, hey, Bob, I hope it's not too soon, but in our 80s, you said the key word is slippery. That probably felt very close to home since this most recent thing, and he said, you have no idea. The words, I think, are pretty accurate, even though they're generalizations. And I hope that we can look at these things, and I'm going to tell you why and what I want to accomplish. But in Psalm chapter 90, verse 12, here's a key text that we've been looking at. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. With wisdom comes perspective. And with wisdom, I've found, comes relaxation. I'm less stressed when I have wisdom than when I have confusion and when I lack clarity. When the future is ambiguous and life seems to be full of fear, fear seems to be accompanied by fear. Fear seems to be accompanied by anxiety, stress, tension, worry. When wisdom rests on us and we gain a heart of wisdom, seems like the key thing that happens in my life is I just take a big deep breath in and out. Years ago, I have this empty container because years ago I put this verse into practice in a way that made sense to me, and I just want to explain it to you. You might have heard this before from me, but years ago I read this verse and I had this idea. God, teach me to number my days. How can I visually kind of experience this verse? My days are numbered kind of thing. How can I do this practically? So I took this vase, or vase, if you're posh, a vase, and I filled it with marbles. A marble a week for 5 years. We had just started the building project, and I had set out in my mind that it was going to take us 5 years to get it done. We did it faster than that, but I took one marble for every week and filled the jar as a way to number my days. And every week, Saturday, Sunday, whichever day, I took a marble out of the jar and I threw it away. And during the course of the 5 years, slowly but steadily, the marbles got less and less and less until, as you can see, I've officially, in case you've wondered, I've officially lost all my marbles. I saved one just, I guess, for nostalgia reasons, for memory. But it helped me to see that time is ticking away and that I don't really have time to waste. And wisdom being added will do some things in our life. It gives us, I think amongst all the things I could say today, wisdom I find not only causes relaxation in my soul, but it gives me life perspective. So earlier this year, I had back surgery, and it was really rough on the front end. I was like, oh man, kind of like in that place where I was like, oh, I might be regretting doing this because the recovery was slow. I think I need to be graphic just to make the point of how bad it was. So I came out from the anesthesia, but going into the surgery, I had this as an expectation. Outpatient surgery, small incision, 7 to 10 day recovery. They got in there and the scar tissue was so bad that the small incision went from a couple millimeters or whatever size it was, small, to 7 inches, a 7-inch incision. He was scraping and grinding because the scar tissue had calcified and became the consistency of bone. So while he's scraping away at the scar tissue, he nicks my spinal cord, which creates a whole set of situations. So immediately I go from outpatient to inpatient. The scar is much larger. The recovery time becomes even longer. And my first recollection is having an allergic reaction to the anesthesia. And my first memory post-surgery is being physically sick with a mask on. I don't think you heard me. Let me say it more plainly. You worry about sneezing when you were wearing masks? You try vomiting with a mask on. It is not a pleasant experience, ladies and gentlemen. This is how I came out, right? The opposite of relaxed. So they gave me medicine to relax me. And I found that the medicine wore off after a few hours, and I had to take more. And it wore off, and I had to take more. This is why we need wisdom. Information is like the temporary muscle relaxer that they gave me. It has a certain shelf life. It only lasts so long. But when we are learning to number our days and adding wisdom to our life, and we get life perspective, that wisdom doesn't last moments like information does. Wisdom has the power to get you through the rest of this decade, and then through the next one, and through the next one, and through the next one. Which brings me to why I wanted to do this series and our purpose. Number one, I wanted you to gain perspective on life where you are. Number two, I wanted you to learn how to help others in whatever decade of life they're in. So listen up and listen in. Number three, I want you to deepen your understanding of others in your sphere of influence. And number four, I want you to learn to answer questions like, why would this person be feeling that or thinking that? Why would they be feeling this or that? Why? I think we have some answers in this. So there's a parable in the Old Testament, in the New Testament in Mark. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read it to you because I've got to move along. But there is a parable that Jesus tells where a farmer goes out and he sows seed. He throws seed on the ground. Y'all remember this story? There's 4 types of ground. There's vacant ground that wasn't ready. There's rocky soil. There's thorns. And then there's ground that was prepared. And we understand that the ground is the condition of our heart. And I was thinking through that this week, and a question came to me. And here was the question that was presented to me. Which came first in the story? The rocks or the seed? In other words, what was there first? The rocks and the thorns or the seeds? Anybody have a guess? Talk back to me. The text says, this will give you the answer, the farmer sowed the seed among the rocks. So the rocks are already in the ground, aren't they? The farmer sows the seed amongst the thorns. So the thorns are already there. So I was thinking through this, and this is what I realized, that in each of our lives, we have spiritual and emotional pre-existing conditions that are there upstream of the moment when God sends seed into our life. And unless we clear those things out, the seed is not going to find its way into soil. And so today when we look at childhood, teenagers, and our 20-somethings, I'm very hopeful because I think we have an amazing opportunity to clear out some weeds and rocks in our loved ones' lives. Now, resist the temptation to experience or think about regret. I wish I would have in this. Don't think I wished I would have. Think, thank God I can change. Think, thank God I can change. Somebody say, amen, I can change. Somebody say, I can change. So here we go. The rocks are pain, which I think happens early in life. The thorns are idols, the cares of this world, choking the life out of us. My wife and I, we have 4 kids, as many of you know. We had 4 by 24. We had 4 in 35 and a half months. 4 in diapers. I've told you this, but in case you missed it, does anybody know how that happens? I'm going to explain it to you very clearly. You ready? How you get 4 kids by 24, 4 kids in diapers at once, 4 kids in 35 and a half months. You ready? You want to know how it happens? High energy, low IQ. And I've watched and I've observed that rocks form as we're raising kids as pockets of pain. But as we age and travel through life, thorns grow. It's the cares of this world. The cares of this world are what we need to help our children avoid, and we need to do the help of the heavy lifting of the rocks. You know, when we were raising those kids, do you know not once, I thought it was rude of them, but not once, not never, did any of my kids come to me and say, man, Dad, we were up all night worried sick about how you're going to pay the mortgage. They never once did that. Nobody ever once came and said, man, Dad, we were praying last night. We were praying all night that we would be able to pay the internet bill. Never once. And you know what? I think that's beautiful. I'm glad they didn't carry that. But as we age, those things tangle us, choke us. Let me get ahead of myself a little bit. Let me just help you to not try to keep up with the Joneses. The Joneses don't even want to be the Joneses. So there ain't no sense in trying to keep up with them. Forge a new path, and if you have a child that's younger than 10, or if you're a teenager, or you're in your 20-somethings, I'm going to help you break free of the rocks of pain and keep the thorns from growing up in your life. Children under 10, the word of the decade for them is the word security. They're asking the question, am I loved and am I safe? Loving children unconditionally helps them build confidence. Sadly, many kids are unloved, loved inconsistently, loved conditionally. Very few are loved unconditionally. Jeremiah says this beautifully. He says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. He was loved from the very beginning unconditionally. I'm going to say some things that are going to be very pointed and they might get me in trouble and they won't be politically correct, but I think they need to be said anyway. And I want to make sure that you understand my heart that unconditional love is the goal. So as a man, I can only think as a man because that's the only life experience I've ever had. I've only ever been able to have the opportunity to think with a masculine brain. And so I have to speak from that context. So know that it's a man talking right now for a few minutes about men to men and women in the room. But in this early stage, men are so important at helping a child feel secured and loved. And when men are separated from their children, either by their choice or by default, maybe because of fear, it costs, listen, it doesn't just cost the child. It doesn't just cost the family. It costs the entire society. Young people need to hear men tell them, I love you and I'm proud of you. I'm not diminishing what a woman can offer, but I only have a man's voice. And I'm seeing some things happen. This is not in the book. These are my words only. They are not Bob's, so don't give him credit if you don't like what I've said. These are my words. I approve this message, okay? So there is an attack, and there are thoughts that are being promoted to us in society, and there's a phrase that's really bothersome to me, and it's this phrase, toxic masculinity. I've grown to hate it. Now, I've hated it because on the side of it that is real and have merit, it's wrong. And men ought to never use size, strength, fear, intimidation, or be abusive in any situation or circumstance ever, period. Right? But there are times when a man's voice of strength must be exerted to be able to keep people safe. I'm going to tell you who I want standing on the wall, guarding me in my armed services. These people that you've mislabeled toxic masculine. I want the man who's going to go to war and fight and defend me and my family. People that I know in this church that are strong. They're not toxic masculinity, but that's the thing that is under attack. Because listen. Weak men cannot keep families safe. Strong men do. I know. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm your friend. But the erosion of men will be the very thing that destroys a culture and a society. And men cannot be afraid to be who they are, nor can they be afraid to tell the people around them, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're making a difference. Keep going. Don't quit. You got this. There have been experiences that I've had with my sons when they were young in this age group that showed them they were loved, showed them that they were secure, and there were times when I was nose to nose yelling and in their face because I knew as a man they needed that to cause them to come up to the next level. Johnny, go to timeout. Wasn't going to cut it in that situation. Okay, praise the Lord, everybody. Let's get back to the book. Let's get back to the book. Unconditional love. An example of this was when Alex was kicking for the local high school, one of the local high school football teams. He had a really rough game early in his junior year, and he got benched, and he was totally bummed. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I knew he needed love unconditionally. And that love unconditionally came in the form of this. Alex, I love you and I'm proud of you whether you make the field goal or you miss the field goal, whether you play or you support the team from the sideline. Either way, you need to know you're loved for one simple reason. My name's on the back of your jersey, and I love you, watch this, not based on your effort, output, or outcomes, but based on who you are as my son, and that's it. We need to pass that on. You are more than the sum total of your efforts and your outcomes. Confidence is the byproduct of predictability. Kids having a predictable environment causes them to be safe and secure, where they have situational confidence, where that's one kind where they're comfortable in certain circumstances. which is great. But I wanted my kids to have life confidence, which no matter what life throws at them, because I know everyone in here that's over a certain age knows this, life is not scripted. You live life live. It happens as it comes. You often don't get sent ahead a memo saying, hey, this is going to happen at 3 o'clock. You got to have it sorted out and have life confidence. So the last thing that I want to help you to do in this age group is help each child connect their actions and their consequences. Before they're teenagers, trying to teach a teenager about consequences and actions by the time they're 16, and you're going to have a war on your hands. It's worth waging, but it's much easier to do before they get to 10. Teach them that. Give every child you love and care about a deep sense of security. Teens, the word of the decade is self. The question is that they're asking, what does any of this mean? Some people in Scripture that you might find interesting were teenagers when they accomplished their feats. David was 16 or 17, historians tell us, when he fought Goliath. Nearly most, if not all of the disciples were teenagers when they joined themselves to Jesus' ministry. In fact, they were the leftovers. You do some research, they were the students not picked for rabbi training. They were looked over. They were the last kids picked on the schoolyard pickup game. And Jesus chose those men and changed the world with the people that society looked past. I don't care if you're in this room and you're a teenager, or if you're raising one or you know one. I don't care what your last name is. I don't care if your family came from money. I don't care if they're dirt poor. Their economic and social status has no bearing on what God can do in your life. He's called you, He will equip you, and He will send people across your path to make sure you do everything that He's put in your heart to do. And this church is here in support to help you to that exact same end. When you're a teenager, you're seeing life through the lens of comparison. That person has more than me, or that person has less than me. They're prettier than me. They're uglier than me. They're richer than me. They're poorer than me. They're popular. They're not popular. We're categorizing. And this is a dangerous game because comparison only creates two things in us, and both are not good. Comparison creates either inferiority or superiority. You think you're better than or less than when you compare, and you're using the wrong thing to measure your life. You're not supposed to measure your life against other people. That's why we have the example of Jesus, and His model for our life is who we measure our life against, and no one else. And so we're getting ready as we age and get into teenage years, and later in them we're getting ready to leave home. And there are three things that I think you can observe about teenagers. And if you know them, or you are one, I want you to think about how you orient your life. You can either orient your life based on goals, problems, or opportunities. And everyone in this room, you've arrived at that conclusion, but maybe no one's told you yet how you filter life. And if you can get this done early as you're raising kids, or you are this age, when you think about the world around you, ask yourself the question, what do I respond to? What motivates me? Goals? Like I want to get to this portion, or I want to get to this point by this time. Or do you identify problems? Say, oh, this is an issue. What do we need to do to remove this barrier? Or lastly, do you see an opportunity and seize it? If in your teenage years, you can figure that orientation out about how your mind works, you're going to be well equipped in life. Because many people who are viewed as critical and negative are simply people who are oriented to life through the situations of problems, but they've never been taught how to harness those problems in a positive way, solve it, get on the other side of it, and leave negativity and criticism behind. You are in this stage, in this phase of life, you're in the process of learning and growing and getting ready for life. So relax. It's going to be okay. 20s. Word of the decade is survival. I want to spend a minute here. Survival. The unconscious and often emotionally disruptive question that we ask in this decade is, can I survive the adult world? Can I pay my bills? Can I figure out what I want to do? Do I want to get married? Do I want to stay single? Do I want to go to college? If I go to college, what do I want to study? If I don't go to college, what do I want to do with my life? I found this thing that was interesting. It was a Forbes 30 most successful people under 30. And a blogger or podcaster was talking about it. And they were talking with this man that was on the list, this young man that was on the list. He became the vice president of the company that he worked for in his mid-20s. And the podcaster said, hey, why don't you tell me how you did that? This is what the young vice president said. He says, I wake up every day at 4:30. Every day I take a cold shower. I have a gratitude journal. I meditate. Number 5, my dad owned the company. That's how you get there fast. Why am I saying that? It's funny, plus life is long. Let me help you if you're in your 20s. Here's what I want you to do in your 20s. Experiment and figure out what you don't want to do for the rest of your life. Figure out what you don't want to do. In my 20s, I did this brilliantly. I realized I didn't want to wait tables. I didn't want to be a server in a restaurant all my life. I figured out I didn't want to hang gutters for the rest of my life. I figured out I didn't want to sell real estate for the rest of my life. I figured out I didn't want to work in a factory for the rest of my life. I got laid off and realized I didn't want to be unemployed for the rest of my life. Come on, somebody. I realized what I didn't want to do. That is a success in your 20s. If you make it through your 20s and you say, I don't want to do this, or this, you're going to be good. Why? Because you've got 3 decades until you hit the most important, most productive decade of your life, your 60s. And I'm going to tell you some of the most frustrated people in life. I'm going to tell you if you're in your 20s, if you survive your 20s and figure out what you don't want to do, you will be ahead of so many people. Because there are people in this room that are in their 30s, 40s, I won't keep going, but all the way up, who still haven't figured out what they don't want to do. Because someone tomorrow, as you're getting ready for work, they're going to ask themselves this question. I'm going to promise you this. Some dude in his 40s tomorrow is going to wake up, brush his teeth, and say, I don't know if I want to do this today. There's hope for all of us, but if you do that in your 20s, you're going to be so far ahead. Like, I could help you. Maybe you went to college and you got a degree and grandma and grandpa paid for it and you finished and you hate it. I'm going to make some people mad right now, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Make a change. Figure it out. Because I promise you this, grandma and grandpa that loves you and cares about you, cares more about you doing what you want to do for the rest of your life and making a difference than begrudging it and feeling beholden to what they invested in you. They do not want your future leashed and tied to their pole. They don't want that for you. Thank you for your enthusiasm, church. I appreciate it. It's really helpful that you're with me like this. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in their 20s when they were thrown into the fiery furnace. What a beautiful metaphor for your 20s. It's garbage to feel that way, but it's very real. Everyone who's not in your 20s and past your 20s, give me an amen if your 20s were like a fiery furnace. There's not very many people in this room that want to go back and do their teenage and 20s again. I can tell you right now, I don't want to go back and have 4 kids by 24. Having babies is for young people, y'all. I'm ready for this grandbaby to come because I hear that when you're done with that child, you send it back to the parents from which it came. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to spoiling the fire out of this child. Their first Christmas, when they're old enough, they're getting a drum set, and it's going back to their house with them because whatever a man sows, that's what they reap. Jake reaping a drum set, y'all. All the noisemakers, full batteries. I mean, we're ready. I digress. We'll have to cut that part out. In your 20s, it's like a fiery furnace. It's tough. It's challenging. Relax. Nobody is expecting you to change the world before you're 30. They're not. And that's okay. Do great things. Figure stuff out. There's no pressure on your life to change the whole world by 29. Life is long. You got some failures in your 20s? You quit some jobs? You got fired? Good. It's all leading you to what God has for you in the future. In your 20s, decide what you don't want to do for the rest of your life and don't do it. Last, get your money right in your 20s. Get your money right in your 20s. Get a system. I'll give you a good one. Give God 10%, give yourself 10%, and live off 80. Set your budget on 80. There's not an adult in this room that wouldn't, if I could wave a magic wand and change their finances, structure their finances by that system. Not a single one of us. You could do even better. You could say, I'm going to give 15% to God, 15% to myself, and 70% of my bills. You could do whatever you want. Now's the time to decide what portion of what you earn you want to live on. But I promise you, when you get behind on this, it is going to take gazelle-like intensity to turn that corner and get it switched back. If on the beginning you're running at 110% on your budget, 100% you're living paycheck to paycheck, and then you're putting another 10% on your credit card, and you come to church and a guy like me says, you need to put God first, you're going to end up ignoring me, leaving, not listening, counting what I've said as something that's not worth listening to because you've oriented your life at full max and you have no room for God in the way that God wants you to do it, and that's a bad way to start your life. That's one thing that I can tell you as I'm standing here. Ange and I, we got our money right with God, and we've never deviated and we've never wavered. Never once. It's either true or it's not. We kept Him first. We did that in our 20s. We actually had it as teenagers. If you're a teenager, you're in your 20s, put God first. Start your life this way. Because then here's what you'll do. What we talked about earlier. You'll model a way of life that your kids want for themselves. There isn't meant to be any pressure or condemnation on what I'm saying to you right now. There's meant to be hope and direction for the future. It's a part of surviving. I'm going to pray over you. But whatever decade you're in, whatever decade you're embarking upon, I hope that this series has added value to you. And I really hope that you remember that this book is available free because of our church partners. It's there on your way out. If you're watching online and you want one of these, let us know in the comments section, and we'll make sure you get one. whatever decade you're in, I'd love for you to do this week. Especially in your teens and 20s. Get a dry erase marker. Go in your bathroom mirror and write these words. Write this down on your mirror. Print it off and put it on the dash of your car. Not in front of your speedometer, but someplace where you can see it. Write these words. Write these words that we sang earlier. I'm going to make it through. And say it every morning when you wake up. God, I'm going to make it through. You won't fail me. You won't let me down. I'm going to make it through. When you get in your car and you drive to school, work, errands, wherever you're going, Starbucks, have that right there on your way there. Say, I'm going to make it through. You wake up in the morning with a text of a breakup or some bad news. You look at that thing in the mirror and you say, we're going to make it through. I'm going to make it through. Me and God, we're going to make it through. You're in your 30s fighting for success. You're behind where you think you ought to be. Say it out loud. I'm going to make it through. In your 40s, in the middle of your struggle and your search for significance, say, I'm going to make it through. In your 50s, right when you're in stride, you're feeling the rhythm of life working with you, you say, hey, we're making it through. When you're getting strategic in your 60s, say, we're going to make it. I'm going to make it through. And I'm going to set the next generation up for success. In your 70s, say, I'm going to make it through. I'm going to have a succession plan. I'm going to tell the goodness of God while I'm here, and they're going to pass it on to others. When your health feels slippery in your 80s, say, I'm going to make it through. In your 90s, when all you want to do is sleep, say, I'm going to make it through. I'm going to make it through. Because God, how many of you know this? God never fails.